Hi, in this video we're going to take a look at RoboMQ's runtime features, which include the application container and the service designer. So RoboMQ has three sort of main components: the client itself, the execution agent, and the monitoring agent. So in a real-world production environment, you would expect to install the execution agent and the monitor agents on your servers, and they would be controlled by your client, by the RoboMQ client. The execution agent is responsible for managing all the processes to do with the runtime on the particular server, and it controls the life cycle of these runners. The runners are the bits that do the actual work, so they are a separate Java process that contains an Apache Camel runtime that houses your business application. So in addition to the execution agent on your servers, in order to make things less arduous to get going, the RoboMQ client itself has a built-in execution agent and a monitor agent to enable testing, so you can get going without having to procure servers and install stuff. So if we take a look at that, in the execution tab we can see our local exec agent. So let's create a runner on that to put our test application inside of. And it needs a service port because all communication between the client and the agents is done over REST. So what we'll do, we'll create a sample application that consumes data from a queue, logs it out to the logging system, and writes it to maybe another queue and maybe a file. So if we select that runner, so we can see that currently on that runner there are no routes. So what's happened here when we've clicked on this is the client has asked the runner, so can you please tell me about your configuration? And it's empty because it's a brand new runner. So let's go to the service builder and create a project. The target runner is what this service builder is currently going to work on. So if we create a new project, we'll call it test project. We'll get rid of this message tab, and we don't need this panel. So this is where the routes are, and we'll uncomment this sample route, and we'll change it to test robo. Now RoboMQ has a database, and it already knows about all its connections. We looked at that earlier. If what you're wanting to pull data from already exists in RoboMQ's database, then the service builder can write the code that you need. So if we click the bean wizard, here we can see every combination of host, port, and channel, every single permutation. So the one we want to pick, we're going to use our test queue manager. It's this one. We'll call it I don't know, WebSphere MQ. I have to give it a name, and we'll parameterize it, which means we can change the values of these various things on a per environment basis. So if you wanted to move from test to UAT to production, this will come in handy. So from here onwards, we can see that it's written a bunch of code that we're going to need, and the upshot of that is that inside our actual route, we can specify that we want to use our WebSphere MQ endpoint. The thing we're connecting to is a queue, and let's connect to Chris Temp1. That's where we'll get the data from. So we'll just copy that. And the source queue is Chris Temp1. We're going to then log that and say we got a message, and we're going to put the payload, the content of the message, into the log file. We won't transform anything at this point, and we'll send the output to WebSphere MQ, and we'll send it to Chris Temp2. But we'll also send it to a file on my hard drive, C:, and I have a folder called camel out. Let's format that. And that's it. That's what you do. So now if we go here and we look at this, we can view the logs of what's happening on this runner. So if we make that a bit smaller, we're now going to deploy to this runtime. this is a new project details, and I can have release notes. I can eyeball the project before it goes out. If I had different environment maps, I could specify those, which would allow me to parameterize this data, these variables in a different way. For example, on a production queue manager, all these details could be different. Currently on the runner, there's nothing there because it's a brand new runner and nothing's on there. So let's deploy that. Get rid of you. So it's coming back up and it's green. So now when I click on this runner, I can see that I have a route which we just created. Now I can look at the definition of this, which shows me the details pulled live from the server, and I can show statistics. So in a previous tutorial I was mentioning that you could prove your SLA based on the maximum queue depth and the worst processing time. So you've got the metrics on it here to be able to do that calculation. So to test it, if we go back to our browser, we're consuming from ChrisTemp1 and we're publishing to ChrisTemp2 and the file system. So let's put a test message on the queue and see what happens. For service. So if I were to now publish that message, okay, so this log message got a message payload test message for service. That's coming from this logger here, but it should have also sent it to ChrisTemp2 and to the file system. So if we have a quick check to make sure that's actually happened, that's there. And if we look on the hard drive, I've got a few of them, but if we sort by today's and have a look at that, then we can see that's there as well. That's all for this one.